Hello, and thanks for joining for episode 2 of the Connect, Learn, Play podcast. This morning, I'm really excited to welcome Robert Pratten. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Are you well?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Whereabouts in the world are you at the minute?
London.
You're in London at the minute? Cause
on a very sunny day, actually, so it's quite good.
Oh, great. Because you're normally sort of to and fro in between London and various other places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not today, though. I'm in one space.
Grand. So, Robert, you're kind of the transmedia man. You've got an awesome book about creating transmedia productions and sort of interactive games, storytelling, pervasive storytelling, and you've created some really awesome software for creating those sorts of stories and games as well. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to do you justice, kind of introducing you. So just very quickly, who are you? Who's Robert Pratten?
Yeah, so I'm CEO and founder of a company called Transmedia Storyteller Limited, and we're a technology company. We also do some consulting work, and our technology is called Conducttr. It's a pervasive entertainment platform, but in sort of common language. It's an interactive, multi-platform storytelling tool. So if you want to engage audiences or engage students across social media, email, text messaging, then this is the platform for you. To give you an example, right now, we're doing a project with Canal Plus in Spain for season 4 of the Game of Thrones.
Oh, wow.
And we've created a massively multiplayer role-playing game on Twitter. So every week before the show goes out, people will be able to attack different realms of Spain. Spain's divided into these 19 autonomous regions. And you'll be able to fight for a realm. And then midweek, it turns into a strategy game. So if you go into stores, if you check on pizza boxes, you'll find codes that unlock shields, swords, potions, clothes, and you use these to build up your character profile, so stamina, wealth, strength, and so on. So it's quite, and we have a web series that we're publishing. What else have we got? And live performances as well. So it's, that's like transmedia storytelling, all in the world of Game of Thrones, but not with the original characters, with some of our own characters that we've invented.
Right, cool. And is it just people in Spain that can get involved with that at the minute?
Well, it's all in Spanish.
Okay.
So it's intended for Spain, but I'm not sure that it's geo-blocked. So I imagine that anybody that can that would like to get involved and can speak Spanish will probably be able to do it.
That sounds great. So I'm just trying to think of the various different ways we can go with this. You mentioned Canal Plus. What other sorts of people or organisations are using this software?
Everybody, really. I mean, when I say everybody, I mean across all different industries, because it's a storytelling platform, and what it does is it creates an immersive environment. So often we think of stories as being told on some sort of screen-based or sort of paper-based medium, like a video or a book or something. But what we're doing is we're creating the illusion that this story world exists around an individual person. So, for example, in the educational sector, we do projects where students organise themselves into teams and they role-play as executives of a company of some sort. So recently we did one on sweatshops. So the students organise into teams, they role play being executives of a sportswear manufacturer, and then they have to decide, do we do training shoe in Florida or in China? And different stakeholders are basically communicating with them either through email or social media and through blogs. And Conducttr, our technology, is publishing all this content. And importantly, when the students interact, so then it responds, and maybe the story branches. So they're given a choice. Which of these Chinese manufacturers do you think you should go with? They choose one, and then the story branches. So it's if it's entertainment or marketing or education, all different areas. Immersive theatre, where people need to engage audiences in the run up to a live event. When people want to do street games, You know, you can sort of text a code. You could run to a location, find a new code, and text that in. We can do phone calls, all different types of things, really.
Ace. I think I came across yourself and Conducttr. It was a case study. It was about, is there something to do with space shuttle crash, and students were responsible for the dealing with the cleanup or something like that?
That's right, yeah. Cosmic Voyage Enterprises. It was a space cargo rocket crashed into a local village, causing environmental damage. And the students there were in teams. They were owners of this fictional space cargo company, and they were given a limited budget, and now they needed to manage the sort of cleanup. So over a 3-week period, they have to deal with sort of the unfolding events. And that game is intended to teach students about ethics and financial responsibility. So one of the problems they have is, like, if they actually if they had the money to pay for the full cleanup, it would bankrupt the firm. And most of the people in the firm, their employees, live in that local village. So they've got this sort of, this stress of trying to, save the village, but also save the firm. Because if they save the village and destroy the firm, no one's got any employment. So that's not good for, in other regards. So it's not necessarily, there's not necessarily a right answer. The most important thing is that the students engage in creative problem solving and that they collaborate as teams. Because once they've chosen a role, so there'll be like the CEO, the finance guy, the marketing guy, corporate social responsibility woman, or whoever it might be, or the CEO could be a woman, and so on. They get different pieces of information, and that means no one person has got the complete picture. They need to collaborate in the classroom and share the information they've got to move forward. It's quite interesting because when we do these games, we normally give them some sort of like ethical challenge that's sort of right on the nose. So there'll be some minor ones, but in that one, they get contacted by someone from the Environmental Protection Agency, and they say, if you give me a backhander, I can write a more favourable report to make your money go further. And the decision made by one of the students in the team will affect everybody. So it's quite It's quite interesting, yeah. And then of course the story branches. So once
I was going to say the story changes based on their decisions. Then,
yeah. If they once they've taken the bribe or refused the bribe, then they get a different series of information, a different series of events.
And is there a kind of a way to win? Is there the right outcome, or is it just exploring these ideas, these possibilities?
Yeah, there's no sort of win, but also there's no foul.
Right.
So the idea is to build the confidence in the students, build the student confidence, and to help them resolve conflicts in the teams. So it's like the teacher is as much a facilitator and a mediator as they are a teacher. So although the teacher's got all the information, it's not about getting the right answer. It's about the journey to an answer. And at the end, the students have to submit a video. So you might think that they would just sort of toss this off, this is our recommendation. But they really get into it and they really kind of role play it. So I've seen some like amazing videos where they kind of sat around the table and like the phone goes off and, this student will go, "Hello? You're kidding me," this type of thing. And then they kind of go through the whole role play of looking at the different charts. And so it's really good. It's really good. And they, in addition to the video, they submit, I'm going to call it a written report, but it doesn't have to be a certain size. It's really just an explanation of why they've chosen a certain decision. And then the organisation that pays for the experience, that's created this experience, our client, they do give some award, but I think the award is usually for like sort of best effort or most engaged. It's not for having the right answer.
So it's demanding a lot of different skills from these students. They're making ethical decisions. They've got to deal with, you talk about financial situations. They've got to deal with how they're going to interact with people. It's a real wide range of skills. What kind of age group students are you working with here?
13 to 17 usually.
Right.
I think we've had some younger, like 11, But when we design it, we're thinking of like 14-year-olds, and so sometimes it skews a bit younger. And the way that it's done is it's all completely opt-in. So they like an email goes out to all the teachers from this organisation saying, we're going to run this game. Registration is going to start at a certain date, and then the game kicks off, a fortnight or whatever from then. And so the students and the teachers all enrol. If they choose not to enrol, that's fine, and if they do, that's better for us. It's great.
So you've got loads of different schools and classes all participating at the same time.
Yes,
that's great. So you mentioned about designing the experience. How do you go about designing an experience like that and creating something like that?
Well, with the sweatshop one, we actually started from the syllabus, from the ethics syllabus, and it says the students should learn X, Y, Z, and then what we do is we think, okay, what characters, what scenario can bring the students into contact with those sorts of decisions that will illustrate those learning objectives. So then we sort of write a story, like a synopsis for the story, and we get that approved. And then once that's approved, then we start to break that down into like more detailed characters and more detailed interactions. So that's pretty much, we normally just start with a blank piece of paper and some learning objectives and think, okay, what's a good scenario that's going to bring that out?
Right. Because I know, like, I've had a go at this, and you came in and demonstrated the software to us and ran some tutorials, and it's complex because there's like so many possible variant, sort of different ways that people could interact and respond. How do you get your head around that? Or you just are you seasoned at it now? Or it just happens?
Well, I think there's two sides to the equation. I think there's one thing learning Conducttr, and another thing learning how to tell these types of stories that will get the students participating. And the way I often sort of frame the analogy is, it's like when you're learning editing, you've got a package like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or something, and you kind of need to learn the tool, but also you need to understand about editing, about whether you cut on the action, whether you overlap the the audio track so it doesn't cut at the same time as the picture. There's all these sorts of techniques that are about getting a good edit that are quite independent of actually learning the tool to do the editing on. And those editing techniques existed in the old days of the Steinbeck, where you kind of work with celluloid. And with these types of projects, the first challenge is knowing that editing bit, or knowing that interactive storytelling component, which is quite independent of Conductr. I think if you know Conductr, what you tend to do is design the participation to suit the technology, because you know, okay, so we can do these things. We can put people into groups, and then we can send emails to individual teams or to all the CEOs, all the finance directors and so on. We know that we can have delayed follow-ups. We know that we can do phone calls. So knowing the capability of the software helps when it comes to do the design. But the first place, before we even get into Conductr, is to come up with a scenario that supports those learning objectives, and then from there we will break it down, normally into acts. So with the Florida example, it's usually a 3-week experience, and it's basically 3 acts. So act 1 is the setup, so we establish the dilemma and the different characters. Act 2 is the conflict, so this is when they're getting contacted by these different stakeholders, telling them, you should listen to me, like the guy from the union is saying it's a travesty that Jobs would leave Florida and so on. Then you've got the Chinese foreign minister saying we can offer you lots of incentives to come to China and all this type of stuff. And then the 3rd week is the resolution, and this is where they have to sort of gather all their information and make a final conclusion. And once we've got it into those acts, we break the acts into scenes. So this is the scene where the students will interact with the there's some other stakeholder like the shareholder, or this is where they interact with the local bakery store, and they're concerned that if the jobs go from the factory, then the bakery shop won't be able to survive. So we look at all these different issues, and then once you've got that scene, then we say, okay, how are people going to interact with a guy from the bakery store? Maybe he's on Twitter. So we create a Twitter account for that character, and then we make the students aware, usually through an email. So usually there's somebody in the game, like chairman of the company, and they kind of direct the students and they help them. They work as like a mentor. So if the students go off track, or we don't see any interactions coming in, the mentor will say, have you seen this, or have you considered such and such a thing? And they might draw their attention to the guy in the bakery store. I've noticed this chap, or this woman tweeting about the impact of our decisions. I think you should investigate. And then inside Conducttr, we will authenticate Conducttr with that Twitter account, and we will set up a series of tweets, and we will look for certain responses from the students, and that character will react and respond based on the reaction we expect from the students.
So how important is interaction in all of this? Why not just set them the scenario, this has happened, what are you going to do about it? What's the importance of interacting with them on Twitter or email or whatever?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The problem right now is that schools are like prisons.
Mm-hmm.
They were designed for the 1800s when like people would sort of like leave school and go to work in a factory or in an office or somewhere like that. But that job security or that job path doesn't exist anymore. And with the rate of change that we're seeing right now, nobody knows what careers are going to be available for the students that are in school right now. So the best that we can do, obviously apart from teaching them the basics, is to teach them how to be self-sufficient and how to be problem solvers, how to be resilient, all these sort of like these personal skills, and also interpersonal skills, being able to work in teams and so on. So the importance of interaction is that it gets students interacting. They're not sitting there like robots reading from a book. And because their lives are filled with interactivity on mobile phones and on computer screens and wherever they go, when they come into the classroom and they're expected to sit still, just listen to the teacher, just read the book, it's like torture to them. And the reason we're seeing all these this is my personal opinion, but I think the reason why we're seeing all these so-called increases in ADD and drugged up kids, quite apart from all the E-numbers that are in food, is because the kids are just restless. They're just bored out of their minds with the current way that education is done. And when we invite the students to actually become creative problem solvers, we don't have those issues. Yeah, sure, we get some kids like arsing about, trying to be funny and stuff like that, but they totally get into it because they become autonomous beings, and they are directing their own problem solving, they're directing their own learning in order to come to a conclusion. And they're not being sort of spoon-fed, or they're not being told. And here's the other thing as well. If you've got a subject like ethics and like a moral dilemma,
mm-hmm.
It's all very well for someone to explain what a moral dilemma is, but it's quite another thing if you're in the centre of it, and now you have to make a decision. Do I go this way or do I go that way? And then you feel it. You actually feel it inside. So it stops being an abstract concept and it becomes something very tangible that you totally get it now. And it's because of that interaction, because you know that your decision will have consequences. And now you have something that you're wrestling with, rather than just something that somebody told you. Someone once had this ethical. Don't think about that.
So it's not just interactive; it is immersive as well, and that's part of the kind of simulation, the experience. Yeah, no, I was just thinking about what you said about kids, and there's kind of I read somewhere recently about kids that, at home they'll have kind of maybe even several screens and have a tablet and a laptop and a phone, and one thing will have like an instant messenger, they'll be on social networking, they'll have music on, they'll probably have a game on, and they'll still be doing their homework all at the same time. And then obviously, so they've gone from this kind of multitask environment that they're very happy in to then being in school where it's like monotask. You know, this is the one task we're going to achieve. I don't know, Pythagoras today in maths, and that's what we're going to do. So I think you're completely kind of aligning with that. I mean, even at university, I know I'm delivering, I don't know, something about media theory, and the students are there, you know, with their iPad or laptop and taking notes, but I can guarantee they've probably got multiple tabs open doing other things as well as taking notes.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's great.
The thing is, the lessons get learned better because if you, you know, it's been shown that when you get in that enthusiastic state, the things you learn stay with you for longer. So if you start from the basis that the kids are bored, anything you tell them is having less, you know, it's sinking in less deep anyway. So, and it's in all our interest to make sure these kids are entertained while they learn, because we don't want them all going to prison.
Absolutely, I'll agree with that. Absolutely.
Or worse, still running amok on the streets because they've not learned anything at school. So,
absolutely. I just want to have a kind of some of the obstacles that in schools. It's like getting on social networks. Actually, in the school, quite often the computer systems are kind of locked down. You can only get on various websites. How have you found that, and how have you overcome that?
It is a problem. Where the problem stems from is that the school wants to distance itself from online behaviours. So if we look at cyberbullying, for example, quite often parents will come up to school and complain to the headmistress or the headmaster that you know, their kids are being bullied on Facebook or wherever it might be. And so the school's reaction is, well, we'll just ban Facebook at the school, so nobody's allowed on social media, or we'll ban mobile phones, this type of thing, or ban mobile phones in lessons. But as soon as the break's over, the students are out there with their smartphones, straight onto social media anyway. So rather than have the school just bury its head in the sand and pretend that it's not their problem, or try to, you know, distance themselves from these issues, it's much better for the schools to actually say, look, we need to teach these students some proper online behaviours and some proper social responsibility, and how to deal with criticism, how their behaviour online affects other people, because sometimes they don't, you know, the students don't realise that. They think what would have been like some teasing in the playground, it's momentary, it's gone. Online, it becomes a big issue because it's there, it's permanent, other people join in, and all of a sudden, you know, we have these tragic cases of kids killing themselves because they're unable to deal with this, you know, this sort of like online behaviour. So the way that we deal with it is really just to tackle it head on and say, look, this is part of people's lives now, and the school ought to be training the students. And in these games, this is one of the things that they do. So we use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use blogs. Sometimes the schools don't want to open up these social networks, and then it becomes like a homework, because we know that the students have access at home. And I think there was a concern so we've been doing this now for about 3 years, and there was a concern at the beginning, like, would all students have access to the technology needed? But I mean, even 3 years ago, right at the start of the project, you can see emails coming in sent from my iPhone. So I mean, like, there are very few, if any, students that don't have access to some sort of online thing. You know, even if worst case they need to go to the public library in order to do it. But for the schools that we've been working, I don't know of anyone, you know, to whom that applies to.
Right. I think that's good. I mean, is the kind of using social networks and online responsibly, is that a key part of the kind of the teaching and the experience you're giving them, or is that sort of inferred? Is that a?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. So, and it depends on the experience. So with the sweatshop one I gave, it's kind of like on the periphery in a way. Like that's part of, that's only sort of 10 or 15% of what the experience has been designed for. But we did a project in Brazil that was designed to teach kids empathy. Okay. And we took the story of Prometheus, and they had to sort of go through this story, and that was only a week long. So the students started off on Monday. On the Wednesday, they come in and they discuss the situation with the teacher, and then they go away again and then come back on the Friday. And I think what's interesting as well is the metrics that the teachers can get. So on the Wednesday, the teacher's there with a report about which students have interacted and which ones haven't. So if anyone tries to bluff her that they've done their homework or they've been interacting, she's like, "Oh, that's funny, because when I look down his report, I don't see any evidence of you getting engaged." And I mean, that was with very young students. I think that was with like 10 or 11-year-old students. Certainly not the Prometheus example.
Right, wow.
What made that a little bit interesting for me was that all the kids had iPads. So I think that there are schools that are spending a lot of money on tablets and giving them out to kids, but I don't know how they think the kids are going to use them, because there's a lot of people looking at educational apps. Well, if that means that someone has to bury their head in a computer screen and go through some sort of math solving problem, like, okay, then maybe that's good for teaching maths, but what does it mean about their social skills? So although we need some sort of device in order for the students to, send instructions and to get information back, it's not about sticking your head in the screen. It's about getting some information and then sticking your head up and talking to real people and then going back to that to interact.
Great, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was going to be one of the next things I was sort of going to move on to. Is sort of technology becoming an obstacle in itself, or you're clearly using it to enable students to create face-to-face interactions. I think that's important in a world where we're living in kind of on-screen interactions, even like we are now, I suppose. It's becoming you're using it or enabling it as a tool to create this kind of collaborative teamwork. So I think that's great, and that's good. Only a good thing for the students, surely.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing you mentioned that I was going to ask you about was the sort of the metrics. So you talked about teachers getting feedback on who's interacted and how much. Is there any other kind of feedback that either you're collecting or you're making available for the teachers? So how students are interacting, in what way, what kind of things there? Is there sort of other measurables in there?
Yeah, so it really depends on the experience and what things the client wants to measure. So, trying to think of a example. So, for example, we're doing a story now where. So, in the transmedia world, you have stories, and then you have the story world. So, in the context of the training, the story would be like the things that unfold to get you to the answer, and then the story world would be all of the materials like the websites and the characters and so on that we create that don't necessarily advance the plot, but will shed light on the problem, that give you another perspective on this task that you've been set. And so one of the things that we do is we look at how sort of goal directed are the students, and how much time do they spend in the world just exploring. So some might just power through trying to just solve the problem to reach the end, the end answer, and others might actually explore around the subject. So we look at that as a metric.
And what's the benefit of that? What does that say about the student?
Well, yeah, because for us it helps us with the story to say, was it worth actually spending time doing this?
Oh, okay.
We'd put this information, say in a blog. Did we did we miss an opportunity? Was that some important opportunity that nobody explored, like some important perspective on this story that nobody actually interacted with? Should we bring that into the main fold to make sure that people do actually read it and pick up on it? Are we setting sort of time constraints that are too tight so that people the students don't feel like they've got enough time to hang out, that they have to race through this world? I mean, and the other thing is that we do have badges, and it's important with the badges, so the students can win badges for stuff they do, but it's important that it's not about the badges, because there's different sort of like learning styles, I guess. So some students, if they know it's all about the badges or the leaderboards, will kind of try to slide by and game the system just to get the badges. So it's trying to find a way that the learning itself is the reward, and the badges are just the way that you sort of track progress as a way to say, yeah, you did it, you got there. Yeah, you did it, you got there. So sometimes we might just keep those to ourselves so that we know, like, so the teacher, for example, can look and track the progress on the students. Like, what if you got a team of 4, but there's only 2 of them in the team that are actually like pulling everyone else along,
right,
and the other 2 are not like really doing anything? So we try to look at that as well to show the relative engagement of different members of the team. So it really depends on whether we're looking for feedback to improve the game, whether the teacher's looking for stuff, like information to see which students are really taking to this or not.
And how do you guarantee that whilst they're completing the activities, how do you guarantee that they're also meeting the learning outcomes?
Well, I don't actually. Yeah, I don't. So that's down to the teachers.
Okay.
Because we're providing the framework. It's like, anyone who designs a textbook. How do you prove that textbook is meeting educate? Well, you can't, can you? I mean, it's up to the teacher to see if actually what they read was, sunk in, and they get tested on it. So yeah, we're not involved in the actual. We're not involved really in the education of the students. We're only involved in creating the experience, and then we hand over to the educators who use that as a framework to, develop the students.
And are you going into schools quite a lot, working with the teachers on these things? No.
No, not at all. No, I'm not. It depends on the client. So recently we met 2 headmistresses from different schools who explained to us the problems that they had in schools, about what they were looking for. We'd already worked on a concept with the client, and we pitched that concept to the headmistresses, who both signed up to it.
Okay.
And then we went off and did it. So we're not like in the classroom. Like, we make sure that we're doing the right things, but we don't like roll our sleeves up when the game is running and get in with the students.
Right. Okay.
And then of course we get the feedback. So the headmistresses, or the teachers or whoever it is, will give the feedback to the client, and then the clients will give the feedback to us about what worked, what didn't work, what problems there are in the classroom with organising the experience in a particular way, and so on.
Okay, cool. What aside from the educational stuff, then, what other cool things are you working on? You mentioned the Game of Thrones thing. I mean, is that going to come to England and English-speaking countries?
I don't know. I mean, there's no plans at the moment. It's going to run. It's going to launch next week, April 7th, and it will run till the end of Game of Thrones, and it climaxes. So whoever wins our Game of Thrones online gets a massive coronation, a live event in the centre of Madrid. So,
wow.
That's quite good. So that's quite good fun.
And how do they win that? How does I mean, you talked about them invading different areas and attacking people, and you can gain sort of build an inventory by, was it buying pizza? Was it?
Yeah. Well, one of the brand sponsors that they've been talking to is a pizza chain.
Oh, okay.
And so the box is that go out will have like codes, redemption codes for in-world items that you can use in your gameplay. So all the fighting and all the behaviours give you experience points.
Oh, okay.
So there'd be a leaderboard, so whoever's got the most experience points. And you've got to survive, you see, because while people are attacking you, people can attack you, betray you, seduce you.
All right, okay. So you're going to be looking on that leaderboard and see who you can take down.
Yeah, exactly. And see, what's great about it is everything's been done on Conducttr. Now, Conducttr is normally invisible. In this case, there's a website, and the website has been done by a company called Dahouti, who's one of our sort of... we have a partnership with them. They're in Paris. So they build the website, but it's like a thin client. So the website presents the data, but all the data is held in Conducttr.
Okay.
So when you go to the website, it makes a program call across the internet to Conducttr, sucks the data out, and then presents it on this map. So there'll be an interactive map where you'll be able to see like hotspots of seduction, hotspots of betrayals, this type of thing. Yeah, no, we're working on loads. We're working with a publisher now. In fact, the holding page just went live. It's a fictional hotel. There's going to be 8 books published from May through to December, and also this online fictional world. So Conducttr's doing the online fictional world. It's publishing all the social media. There's a web series, 12-week web series, 36 episodes. So Conducttr's publishing all of those, all the blog posts, and the woman who's the star of the web series, she has a love interest who's only available interactively, and she sets you different sort of puzzles. They're not really puzzles, but she asks you to find out more about this love interest, and so off you go, and you find that the plot thickens the more you interact with this character and the different characters that you get brought into contact with. So that's another example. So it's all interesting stuff. It's all storytelling. It's all interactive, and it's all about engagement. Whether it's engagement in a fictional context, because people often say with student projects, they're all sort of trapped in a room. Yeah, but they're not actually, because one, it's a free opt-in. Mm-hmm. They don't have to do it because it's kind of like extracurricular. And if they're not engaged, then the client doesn't come back and buy more. So we need to make sure they're engaged, to make sure that they keep coming back to relicense the software.
So that was the next sort of thing I was going to ask about actually, as it was the sort of commercial side of it. So it seems to me that there's kind of several aspects to this. You can buy the license to Conducttr, to use Conducttr to create your own stuff.
Yes.
Or you could work with you as on the educational side of it, and then there's the marketing as well. So is that the 3 strands that your business is based on? Am I right in thinking that?
First and foremost, it's licensing the technology.
Okay.
So anybody can buy a license and use it for whatever purposes they want, more or less. Sometimes people come to us and say, we've heard that you're experts in this area, we've got the software, please can you give us a turnkey solution? So then we do everything.
Okay.
And so it can run between the two. So with one client, and it's kind of proved to be a little bit typical, when they first get going, they say, we'd like to learn on the job. So you do the first experience, and we'll understand how you use the software, and then we'll take it from there. So that's often what happens. So we will do the first one as a turnkey solution, include some training in there, and then for the second experience, they go off on their own, or they might write the story, and we do the interactive. So we can cut it. Either way, but it's actually better for us and better for the client if they do everything, and we just license the software, because then they keep the knowledge in house. They're closer to the students and everything. So and then they've got transferable skills that they can take on somewhere else.
Sure.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it sounds great. Like I said, I've played with the software when you came in and you did a session for us, and it got me thinking a lot about the way, I've got a media and film production background, and this kind of traditional way that we were telling stories, very kind of linear. And I've been thinking about transmedia for a while, and I've been interested in it, read various books, but actually kind of sitting down with the software and thinking, right, I can produce something now. I had kind of like expanded my mind.
Well, actually, you mentioned the word there about linear storytelling. I mean, we've done crisis simulations.
Okay.
And for example, the one that we've got the video on, the Blink mining. That's an example where the client wrote the story and we implemented the interactive, and it's very straightforward, and it is a linear story, but the students taking part don't know that it's a linear story, so they make decisions and they have consequences because the character mood changes. So some characters get friendly and others get angry based on the decisions you make, but the actual plot points don't change. So it's a linear story, but because you're in the thick of it, you're under time pressure, and you've got a journalist saying, what can you tell me about this mining disaster? Have you sent the military in, or are you going to use your own private security? What are you going to do? So it gives you, or the students, the feeling that it's dynamic. Well, it is dynamic. I mean, it gives them the feeling that they're impacting the outcome, but actually the outcome is a series of predefined decision points over a 2-hour period in that case. So I think that for people getting into this, usually the biggest hurdle is not the branching, because many people are familiar with choose your own adventure books where it says turn to page 5. If you want to do this, turn to page 36. So that's one side, and normally most people get that. The tricky bit is understanding how to invite the audience in, and how to invite the students in. Like, this is the story I want to tell, how do I make it interactive? And all you need to do there is think, well, here's a character, this character's got some information, what do I need to ask him for him to reveal that information? And it's really as simple as that. And so you think about it as the perspective of these different stakeholders, whether they're whether it's for a crisis sim or whether it's for Game of Thrones or whatever. You say, what does this character want, and how would he react if someone asked him for the knife or for the flash lamp or whatever it is, and off you go from there.
Cool. Okay, I'm quite conscious of time. One of the things that this is only the second episode of the podcast, but one of the things I'm intended to ask everyone is the Connect, Learn, Play podcast. So what's kind of let's go for advice. What's your kind of recommendations when talking to people about connecting, learning and playing? Because I think they're all sort of equally important, and certainly it fits what you're talking about.
How do you mean?
In life, with anything, with regards to, I don't know, engaging with people. I
think do it frequently. I would say, do it frequently, and don't be scared. I think what I see often is too many people theorising and speculating and not rolling up their sleeves and getting in. And I think that when we're designing user experiences, when we're designing student experiences, it's much better to do something small and manageable and then grow it, rather than sit back and design this massive big Rolls-Royce kind of project that never actually gets launched. So I think that would be my advice: is connect often, and play often.
And that'll help you to learn, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
because with these
loop.
experiences, it's an iterative process. So you do something, you learn, and then you modify and you do it again, and you keep getting better at it. Whereas you'll never get better at it just by reading all the materials. And I'm someone that produces lots of materials, so I like to share my learning as we go through these things, and I hope that will inspire people to sort of learn from my mistakes or learn from what I've done. But it is about other people, encouraging other people to do and to experiment on themselves and by themselves, and to feed back to the community at large, rather than all of us just discussing the subject.
Great, that's fantastic.
Really good.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly as well. Doing a PhD with action research is kind of my main drive. So that kind of iterative doing and reviewing is key. So that's fantastic. How can people find you and find out more? And I mean, you've got your book that's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon. It's all available for free on SlideShare. Yeah, if you search for getting started in transmedia storytelling, if you just Google it, it will come up. I think it links to the free version first.
I think is that a SlideShare? Is it?
It's a SlideShare, yeah, and you can download it as a PDF. And then if you would like the paperback version, you can buy it on Amazon. Yeah, there's a Kindle version as well. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter as Rob Pratten, and on the website at tstoryteller.com.
tstoryteller.com, and that's the place to go if you're listening to this and you think, oh, I'd quite like one of these, to get involved with my students involved in one of these experiences, or I'd like to have a go at making something myself.
Yeah, absolutely. If you just search for Robert Pratten, you'll find me online. And there are many Robert Prattens, but only one who comes up frequently. So
right, okay, great.
If the picture looks like me on this webcast, it's probably me.
I shall put all the links in the podcast notes as well.
All right, really
That's
good.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on talking. I'm sure there's a plethora of other things that we've not explored regarding transmedia and everything else, but that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care, Jamie.
Take care. All the best. Bye. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found it interesting and useful. We will have another one in 2 weeks, which will be toward the end of April. I can't remember the date off the top of my head. If you did enjoy the podcast, do share it on Facebook, Twitter, etc. You can get in touch with me at Jamie the Coles on Twitter, or you can send me an email at jamie-coles@live.co.uk. Thanks very much for listening, and keep an eye out for the next podcast. Cheers.